Hello everyone, my name is Ramba Mamba and this is the first video in a series where we will learn to make an FPS game in 2020 for complete beginners. So I'm going to start with the Unity Hub open and I'm going to create a new empty 3D project and I'm going to call it FPS. Okay, Unity has booted up and the first thing that we're going to notice is that we have this big empty square right in this middle. So this is your scene where you can design your level. And so we can navigate this with a couple of things. So we can use the middle mouse button and we can hold it to kind of pan around. We can press the right mouse button to kind of look around. And also we can use these tools at the top left corner. The hand tool to move around. The move tool. So for example, if we select the camera, we can move the camera up, down, left, right, and such. The rotate tool, so we can rotate the camera in any direction. And the scale tool, we can scale things. Now that we know how to navigate the scene, let's start by making our FPS game. So the first thing that we're gonna need is we're gonna need a player. So I'm gonna go into the hierarchy, which is this place right here, and I'm gonna right click and create an empty object. I'm gonna use this for organization. So on the right hand side, I'm gonna change the name to player. And also you can notice that it has this component called transform, a position. It's at some offset. I'm going to change this to 0, 0, and 0. So now it's perfectly in the center. It's right there. And this is just an empty object. I'm going to use it for organization. With the player selected, highlighted, I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a 3D object and a capsule. So this will act as the graphics for a player. This will represent our player for now. Later we can change this with a skinned mesh of a humanoid. I'm going to replace the name of this to graphics. As you can see, it has a couple of components there to it, and these components are pretty much just something that modifies it. For example, we have a capsule collider, so that if it collides into anything, it'll act reasonably. It'll won't go through it. We have a mesh renderer, which renders the mesh, and then it's rendering a capsule. We can also add component. We can add pretty much anything, like a mesh, miscellaneous, navigation, and we can also make custom components by making our own code. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on player and I'm going to create a camera. This will act as the eyes. So it's already at 0, 0, and 0, but with the camera selected in the hierarchy, I'm going to press W so I get to the move tool, and then I will move it up so it's near where the eyes would be, and also move it a little to the right. There you go. That looks about nice. That's about where the eyes are. So now we have that set up. Let's make the ground next. So I'm going to minimize the player, and under I'm going to make another empty object. And you can see this one's also at an offset. So I'm going to set it back to 0, 0, and 0. And I'll name this environment. I can't spell. With it highlighted, I'll create a plane. So this will be our ground. I'll label it as ground. And you can see that our player is halfway through it. So I'm actually going to bring it down on the y-axis by -1. So it sits perfectly on the player. I'm also going to increase the size of it. You can do this in two ways. You can either click on the ground and you can change the scale on the transform component, or you can press R and you can use the scaling tool to kind of scale it up. I'm going to change it in the transform so I get accurate positions. I'm going to change it to 2, 2, and 2. That looks about good for now. Now we can move on to making a script for our player, which will be like a special rule that allows it to move and look. So I'm going to close up environment. I'm going to click on player. I'm going to add a component. I'll type in script, new script, and we can choose a name. I'll call this player movement. Create and add. You should see the script pop up right here, and in our project tab down below, we can double click on the code icon to open it up in Visual Studios. So Visual Studios has booted up, and first thing that you're going to notice is that we have this predefined code, I guess. So pretty much what this is saying is that our code name is called player movement, and the code in is called class. A class pretty much holds all your data for your code. So you can see that we have a start bracket and an end bracket. So that means that everything that is in between that start bracket and end bracket is part of public class player movement. We want everything that we're going to write to be in between here because we want everything to actually run and happen. Next, you see that we have these two things called void start and void update, and they have these two curly braces that start and end them. So whatever I put in here, for example, I say hello, will occur at the very beginning of the game, the first thing that happens, whatever is between these two brackets. If I put something here like what's up, this will happen every single frame because void update occurs every single frame. So that is very, very fast. At the top, right under this brace, we can define all of our variables that we're going to use inside of our script. So in this script, we're going to define two variables. We're going to define a public float named speed, which is set to 5, and a vector2 named velocity. So basically a vector2 is a coordinate plane. It takes in two inputs, like an x and a y. We're going to use this to determine what direction we should move our player in, and the speed's going to determine what speed we should move in that direction. Since we don't want to, we want the movement to be updated constantly, I'm not going to be using void start, so I'm going to delete that. And in void update, I'm going to expand this a little. We need to do a couple of calculations. First, we need to get the values of oh my bad. We need to get the values of the user input. So I'm going to do velocity.y is equal to input.get axis vertical with a capital V. So basically what this line is doing is we're setting the y value of velocity to our input, which on the vertical axis, which would be W, S, up or down. So that means if we press W, the value will be 1, S will be -1, up will be 1, and down will be -1. And then we multiply this by the speed and time.delta time. Basically, time.delta time makes it a timed function. So void update happens every single frame. That means if you have a really fast computer with lots of frames per second, then you're going to be able to move faster than everyone who has a slower computer. So we're going to use multiply by time.delta time so it's frame independent. Next, I'm going to do the same thing for the x value of velocity and get the x-axis value of our input. I'm also going to multiply this by speed and also time.delta time. In order to finish one of those sentences, so if I type in time but not caps, you can press tab and it'll autocomplete for you, which is really nice. Really nice. Lastly, now that we have our two variables, we just need to set our position to that. So I'm going to do translate velocity.x 0 velocity.y. So now we're taking these two variables that we took from our input and we're setting our current position to that. If you remember what transform is, inside Unity, if we click on our player, it has a transform. This controls the position, rotation, and scale. So we take the position and then we move it accordingly. So now we have our movement all set up. Let's head back into Unity. And if we click on our player, we have the player movement script and it says speed is equal to 5. We can click the play button. And now we should be able to move forward, backwards, left, and also right. We can't turn though, and so we'll do that right now. But first, let's go to File and click Save. Now I'm gonna open up Player, and since I want to I want to do camera look. I'm gonna add a script to camera. But first, when we're doing camera look, there's something you need to know how it works. So for example, if I move to the rotate tool by pressing E, when you look up and down, you look up and down with your head, right? Not with your whole body. But when you're turning left and right, you turn your entire body. All right? You turn your entire body, not just your eyes. So in our camera, I'm going to add a component, and I'll do script again, new script, and I'll label it camera look. So I'm going to open it up in Visual Studios by double clicking it. So with that in mind, we need to get a couple of variables that we already have in our game. We need to get the position of our player so we can rotate it. So I'm going to do public transform character. We're basically just taking the value of the character, and we can use this to set it to anything. So for example, if we want to set the player to 1, we'll do character equal to position.1. Something similar. So over here, I created our character, and I created a Y rotation, and I created a sensitivity. We'll use these variables in our code to move the player. So similar to how we did it in the movement, we're gonna get the X position and the Y position, and we're gonna move it accordingly. So over here, I'm making 2 new variables, mouse X and mouse Y, and I'm getting their inputs accordingly. Actually, I've just noticed a bug. It's supposed to be 2 of them. There you go. Mouse Y, multiply by sensitivity, time dot delta time. Okay, so now that we're getting our X axis and our Y axis inputs, we want to actually the first thing that we need to do is that I'm going to reverse the Y rotation. Because in most games, if you haven't noticed, that the Y-axis is actually flipped. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to set my Y rotation backwards by doing so. And then remember, for Y rotation, we do not want to move the we do not want to move the actual player. We just want to move the camera. And another important thing that we want to do is that we don't want the camera to be able to do a full 180 degrees, because then that would just snap their neck. So we want to like clamp it to 90 degrees and negative 90 degrees. So in the code, I'm going to do math f.clamp, and I'm going to pass through Y rotation and negative 90f and 90f. So 90 degrees, negative 90 degrees and 90 degrees. I found that works the best. It's not too much, but not too little. Lastly, we just need to set everything to the variables that we made, Y rotation and X rotation. So remember, for our rotation on the up and down axis, oh my gosh, up and down axis, we do not want to move the entire player, just the camera. So we're gonna do quaternion dot Euler. Because this is on the camera, whenever you do transform it without specifying what transform, it means the transform of the object that you're using. So this is taking the camera and taking its local rotation and setting it to our Y rotation and 0 and 0 on the other axes. So you might be wondering what a quaternion is. So a quaternion is a complicated math term. I couldn't really explain to you what it is, but basically it controls rotation. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just controlling rotation. Very similar to just the vector 2. Lastly, we need to rotate the entire character for the um, x-axis by vector 3 dot up and by our mouse X. Now if we save this and head back into Unity, remember we still need to tell the computer what the character is in that transform. So heading back into Unity, if I click on the camera, it says character non-transform. So I'm going to drag our character. Oh, my bad. Messed up. I'm going to drag our player and I'm going to drag it right into this slot. So now when we hit play, we're able to look around and we're able to move. Awesome. Lastly, I just want to make it so that this mouse right here is not visible so that you don't go out of your screen. So in the void start, I'm just going to do cursor lock mode, cursor dot lock state is equal to cursor lock mode dot locked. Now it'll stay in the middle and you won't be able to move it. You won't be able to see it. I'm sorry, there's no parentheses. So I'm going to save the script, head back into Unity, and make sure you save your game by going to File, Save. Otherwise, your game might become corrupted. And hit play, and now I think, yep, I don't see my mouse anymore. You guys might be able to see it because it's a recording, but I don't see it. Perfect. That's all for this video. Next week we'll learn about shooting and maybe some jumping. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please consider subscribing and liking. It doesn't cost anything and it helps me out a lot. Thank you so much. See you in the next one.